We are solving the differential equation. There are 5 steps to doing these problems. We're going to do only 4 of them on this problem, and we'll show you what we're doing. The first step to this problem is I want to get all of the y's on the left-hand side of the equation and all of the x's on the right-hand side of the equation. So if I want to move this y squared over to the other side, what do I need to do? Divide. And so I'm going to get dy divided by y squared. How do I get rid of that dx? Multiply it. It's equal to 4x cubed dx. I scored a point on the AP exam. Step 1 to that problem, what we just did is we separated the variables. Step 1, you want to separate. Get the y's on one side, the x's on the other. That scored you a point on the test. You happy now? Spelling's rough. Separate. All right. Once we've separated, we don't want the dy and the dx there anymore. We are trying to solve this initial value. We're trying to solve the differential. What do we do to get rid of a dx? We integrate. So step 2 on these things is we are going to integrate both sides of the equation. We are integrating. Boom, boom. And that might be a little bit weird to you. I'm going to rewrite this as y over y squared. I could write that as y to the negative 2. I haven't integrated yet. I'm just rewriting. We are integrating y to the negative 2 power. So that means to integrate, I add 1 to the exponent, y to the negative 1, and I need to divide by my new exponent. So now it's negative 1. I'm dividing by that. I'm just going to make it negative y. Added 1 to my exponent, made it negative 1. Divided by negative 1, it became negative y to the negative 1 power. Technically, when we integrate that, we could put plus c. All right? But I'm going to have plus c's on both sides. And this is kind of strange, but if you have plus c's on both sides, I can take the one c, move it to the other c, and just make a brand new c. That seems really strange. Just trust me on that. All right? We could talk about the math behind it all day long. It's not worth it. When we integrate this problem, all we're going to do is add c on the right-hand side. And so I'm going to integrate 4x cubed. So I'm going to add 1 to my exponent. It's x to the 4th. I'm going to divide by my new exponent. So now it's a 1 because it's 4 divided by 4. And then what else do I need on the right-hand side? Plus c. Technically, I added the c on the other side together. Boom, whatever. Integrate. That's step 2. I've just scored my second point on the AP exam. Okay, separate. Step 2 is integrate. Step 3, what do you think I'm going to do next in this problem based on what we did in Bellwork? Plug it in. We are now going to solve for c. We are plugging it in. We are taking these two numbers. We are plugging it right into that guy, and we're going to figure out what c is. So it's negative. Plugging in for y, I'm plugging in a 1. Plugging in for x, I'm plugging in 2. Solve it. Let's look. What is 1 to the negative 1 power? What does that do to my 1? Moves to the bottom. So it's still 1. I'm doing the reciprocal of 1. It's 1. But it's negative. 2 to the 4th is 16. Plus c. I'm going to subtract 16. C is equal to negative 17. That is my c value. I separated. I integrated. I solved for c. What do you think I'm going to do next? Once I've solved for c, I'm going to take that number and I'm going to plug it back in for c. So I'm going to rewrite this over here. Negative y to the negative 1 power is equal to x to the 4th minus 17. That scores me a point on the AP exam. I've gotten 4 points already, depending on the problem. Sometimes it's only 3 at this point. But it could be worth 4 at this point for plugging that in. That's super easy. I plugged in a number, and I just stole a point from the last one. Once I've done that, the whole goal of this problem is to solve this differential equation. So any guesses on what my next goal is on this thing? I am solving for y. I'm getting y by itself. And so this is all algebra. There is no calculus involved anymore. After step 2 of integrate, it's not calculus. It is algebra. All right, we're going to solve for y. I want to get y by itself. That means I need to get rid of everything. What do I want to get rid of first? The negative. How do I get rid of the negative sign out in front? divide by a negative, or in other words, flip all my signs. I just changed all my signs. I multiplied everything by a -1. All the negatives went away, or they flipped. This is kind of strange. It's y to the -1. Yeah, you can do this a lot of different ways. I'll write it out a few ways. You could say that this is 1 over y. I want to get y by itself. It's not by itself right now. What would I do next? Switch, multiply both sides by y. Y is not by itself. What would I need to do? Divide. That's super ugly, but it got y by itself. That's a thing you could do if you want to write it out that way because it makes you feel better. Do that. I just always think, hey, I've got the reciprocal. I want to take the reciprocal of both sides. Really, to get rid of the -1, I would raise both sides to the -1 power. That is getting rid of a -1 because -1 to the -1 is just y. And if I'm taking the whole side to the -1 power, it's 1 over -x to the 4th plus 17. That's it. That's it. That gave me my points. Again, that right there can score you 5 points on the AP exam. We separated, we integrated, we solved for C, and then we solved for Y at the end. It is very much mathematical. It is not something that you have to do a lot of thinking. You do this, then you do this, then you do this, then you do that. Every time. Questions on the first one? Let's do it again. Number 14. dy dx equals that thing. What are we going to do first? Separate them. Separate it. That means I want all the y's on one side. So to get the y minus 2 over, what do I need to do? dy over y minus 2 is equal to x minus 1 dx. Don't let the parentheses weird you out. They're there to kind of separate them, but the x minus this and that, they're the same thing. At this point, I separated. Then I'm going to integrate. Integrate both sides. I am integrating dy over y minus 2. That might be a little bit tougher for you to pick out. But what is the antiderivative of dy over y minus 2 going to be? ln, natural log of the absolute value. Super important on this problem. If you don't put the absolute value, you basically lose all the rest of the points here. So you got to put that absolute value, y minus 2. If it were like 2 minus y, then I would have to divide by a negative. But the derivative of y minus 2 is 1. So that's it. That's the antiderivative. And on the other side, I got to take the antiderivative of x minus 1. X becomes x squared. I increase my exponent. I divide by my new exponent. And then -1, I'm going to increase my exponent. It becomes negative x, divide by 1. It's still that. But that's not my answer. Plus C. We separated. We integrated. I'm done with the calculus. As soon as you get past step 2, you're done with calculus. Now all you have left is algebra. We separated. We integrated. Now we are going to solve for C. Do that. Plug in. Get a C. So we are solving for C. I plugged in 2 and 4. What's 4 minus 2? 2. It's natural log of the absolute value of 2. So the absolute value don't really matter anymore because it's already positive. If I would have gotten like a -2 in there, then we would make it positive. But it's natural log of 2. 2 squared is 4 times a half is 2 minus 2 plus C. C is going to be equal to the natural log of 2. Super ugly, but I don't care if it's ugly. We can still do the problem. Once I've found that C, what am I going to do with it? Plug it in. We solve for C. We plug it in. Now I've got this problem right here. The natural log of absolute value y minus 2 is equal to 1/2 x squared minus x plus the natural log of 2. I plugged in C. Once I've plugged in C, my fourth step to this problem is what? Solve for y. All right, so let's do that now. I got to solve for y. It means I got to get y by itself. What do I need to get rid of here in order to solve for y? ln. I need to do something that does the opposite of ln to get rid of it. The opposite of ln is I need to raise both sides to the e. I'm taking both sides to the e. So if I do e to that power, e and ln are going to cancel, leaving you with the absolute value of y minus 2. Over here, this is e to the 1/2 x squared minus x plus natural log of 2. Careful. If this is a free response question, go right on this path. Don't do any simplifying during the problem. It's not worth your time. However, let's say this was a multiple choice, and it could be. Let's show you something that they could do. So we are going off into pre-calculus world. You remember how much you used to love pre-calculus? Yeah, you totally remember this. I know you did. 3 to the 2 plus 1. What is 3 to the 2 plus 1? What would that get you? That gets you 27. What about 3 squared times 3 to the 1st? That is also 27. Those two things are the same. Okay? Remember that if you wrote 3 to the 2 plus x, that is the same thing as saying x times, it's the same thing. Okay? It's the same thing. You can separate them like that. That is understanding exponents. And so what I'm saying with that is this. This right here is the same thing as this, e to the 1/2 x squared minus x times e to the natural log of 2. Those two things are the same. What is e to the natural log of 2 going to get me? 2. And so you can simplify this problem by writing it like this. You do not have to simplify, though. It is a free response question on the AP exam. You can totally leave it just like that and get full credit. So if that what I just said bothered you, skip it and don't do it. Everybody good to that point? Next thing I got to do is get rid of absolute value. What do I do to get rid of absolute value? Answer this question. What is x? It is 6 or negative 6. Can it be both of the things at the same time? You can have a number that's 6 and negative 6? No, it's either one or the other, but it could be either one. So to get rid of absolute value, we are going to raise both sides, or we're going to change both sides to be plus or minus. The plus or minus part cancels out the absolute value on this side, and it's going to be absolute value on the other side. Okay? We got one last thing to do. I got to get y by itself. Is y by itself? Nope. What do I need to do? Add 2. Y is equal to plus or minus 2e to the 1/2 x squared minus x plus 2. This is a algebra-heavy problem, but you can handle that. Technically, we are still not done because it can't be both positive and negative at the same time. We are finding a particular solution, which means 1. How do I decide if it's a positive or a negative in the end? The ordered pair. If I plugged in this point of 2, 4, it should be a true statement. So think about that. We're plugging in 2. I'm plugging in 2. If I plugged in 2 here, I need it to become 4. 2 squared is 4. 4 cut in half is 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. E to the 0 power would get me 1. So now I have the problem. Here's your choices. You can either be 2 times 1 plus 2 or negative 2 times 1 plus 2. Which one of those answers is going to get you 4? Positive. And so the answer to this question is the positive version of this problem. y equals 2 e to the 1/2 x squared minus x plus 2. A positive version. So there is one last step on this problem that we didn't have on the last problem, which was decide. It can't be plus or minus. It has to be one or the other. Remember that the calculus kid I told you about that came up with the Snapchat, negative Snapchat? Yeah, he's a weird kid, and he used to come up with weird sayings all the time. And so when we did this problem, he wanted to come up with a saying to help him understand it. So we've got separate, integrate, solve for C, solve for Y, and then decide. So he referred to this as SICYD, which is weird, but it helped him remember it, and it helped my class, so I'm telling that to you. But my first period did not like SICYD, and so they changed this last one instead of decide was options, which they thought made it sicko mode, but it makes it SICYO, which is nothing, but we went with it anyways. And so SICYO might help you remember our steps. Separate, integrate, solve for C, solve for Y, and then option at the end. SICYO mode. SICYO mode is what we just did there.